This is Things Police See, First-Hand Accounts, with your host, Steve Gould.
Welcome to the podcast that interviews active and retired police officers about their most intense, bizarre, and sometimes humorous moments on the job. I am Steve Gould, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being here, everybody. Thank you for all the new subscribers that found the show. Thank you for the returning vets. I love you guys. Thank you for the rating and review. The best thing you can do for the show is Patreon. That's where that keeps all the lights on, that keeps the boat afloat. If you really, really love the show, there's two levels, patrolman or sergeant. Sergeant, you get a shout out during the show. Both of them get direct access to me. It's a little community, kind of like Facebook, but it's behind the paid wall. So if you really love the show, you can do that. But other than that, the 5-star review on Apple Podcasts helps a lot because the show's going to remain for you guys. I'm not gonna take content away. It will just remain free, just so you can get exposed to the men and women law enforcement, their stories, and get a real appreciation for what they do. That's what the show is all about. Today's podcast almost didn't happen because my kids are throwing up everywhere. I don't know if you have kids, but if you do, their puke is the stinkiest because it's usually like hot dogs and mac and cheese. But we went to a friend's house for Easter. Had a great time, but the husband was kind of sick. He stayed in the bedroom, thought it was just food poisoning, and we were like, we kind of gambled. We're like, all right, well, we'll go anyways. Let's have some fun. It was a really good time. And then the next day was yesterday, and we came home and we watched a scary movie. So my 9-year-old was probably too scary for him. So shame on us. He wanted to get in bed with us, and then like 1 a.m. it was just that noise, and you just get awoken to like a start. And then you're covered in pre-digested or half-digested cheese products. The worst smell, just the worst. It wouldn't stop. And then, kids, when they puke, they're just kind of like, what's happening? What do I do? And you're like, I don't know. And then they're just throwing up on you. And then half an hour later, my daughter was throwing up everywhere. And then just before I came down today to interview today's guest, my son, 3-year-old, is just lying on the floor. And he looked he'd been fine, but he looked kind of like ashen, and he just went, blah, and the puke went up on his face and then into his ear. And I told my wife, oh, I'm really sorry. I have to go. So that's what I've been up to, guys. I'm very, very excited for today's guests. I'm a fan of his. He's got his own podcast. He has his own podcast, and he actually also features on a podcast. He's a 29-year veteran of law enforcement, retired as a lieutenant. The big dog, the LT, from Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office in Tampa back in 2021. He actually ended up back up in the comm center running the place after working for a cop as a while, which kind of makes sense for him having the comm center podcast, which is based a lot around 911 calls and dispatch. He's featured, I think, weekly, Fridays. I watch it on Failure to Stop's podcast, Friday Breakdown. That's with Eric Tanzi, who is also a guest of the show. Great podcast. Really fun. I'm really honored to have him on. So without further ado, let me bring on the great Drew Breezy. Drew.
Hey man, it's an honor to be here. I'm so sorry that we have to interrupt your the Easter poisoning of 2023, but hopefully we can get through this quick enough for you to get upstairs. There's a biblical lesson in there somewhere about the child's mac and cheese leaving the tomb, resurrecting on Easter Sunday. I'm sure there's something in there. Yeah, spin it positive.
Well, if my wife asks you, we were on the podcast for 4 hours. I don't plan on coming up
until 7 in the evening.
Oh man, I got to tell you, I'm one of these people that like gets made fun of at bad scenes and stuff because I have the really weak gag reflex. I get it. Just all the, I remember being at crashes anywhere, and I think I've fooled myself. I'm good. And then it's so primordial for me that just, I could never have been a homicide detective. There's no way.
Yeah, I think I'm fine with the sights. It's the smells. I think we're probably in the same boat. I mean, as long as I'm staring at it, it's like being being car sick. As long as you're looking out the windows, you're probably going to be fine with the vertigo. But so as long as I'm looking at the gore, I think I'm okay with it. It's when I start to smell the iron or the or the others, just the goo, involved. Or responding one time to a trailer here in Florida. There's heat during the summer apparently, but
real hot down there.
we responded, 2 young ladies that worked on the squad that I worked on. They were like, there's this weird stuff dripping from beneath the trailer.
Oh no.
And yeah, it was the guy. I mean, he was in his bathtub, so it was disgusting.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
It's just, again, you can see it and be fine with it. Once you smell it, you'll never forget it. And it's gut wrenching.
Yeah. Like and it's human. So it makes it like, I remember, same thing. Like when they roll them or they move them or they're bloated and they move them and it's like, I just can't do it, man. And then even when I was a natural resource officer, I don't know if I mentioned this before, but we had a dead porpoise, right? In the back of the truck. God. You can't leave them on the shore. People complain. We got in the back of our big patrol trucks and we had this pit. We called it the pit of death. We just had it dug with a backhoe and we would dump all the sea life down there. And as it goes off and the guys I'm working with, the other officers know I'm like a no-go with smells and stuff. The thing, as it's going down, it scrapes, because we've got the truck backed up to the hole, it scrapes its voice box, so it goes, it makes the noise, and stuff flies out of its mouth onto my face.
Oh, and my God.
It smelled so, I immediately was going, rah, 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 and my buddy's like, yeah! I'm like, you pricks.
I'll never look at a dorsal fin the same. I can only imagine what's in that thing's gut after it's 48 hours. Like it's eating rotten stuff from the bottom of the sea to begin with, and then it rots as it rots. So,
man,
it's exponential.
Partly my fault that my boss he had spotted it, or someone complained about it like 2 months before, and we were kind of like, my supervisor was like, yeah, we'll take care of it, and then we were kind of like, yeah, hopefully this winter it just gets like eaten or something. No, it thawed and got rancid. So yeah, Drew, that's where I sit with those things. What do you think about podcasting so far? How long have you been doing it total?
I am having an absolute blast with this. So I think I retired and I say I think because time flies.
Right.
Time flies. You know how they do, they talk about like when you're a rookie in roll call and they're like, the sergeants at the front of the room, like, next thing you know, guys, you'll be in your 25th year. And I was always like, yeah, bullshit. Like I was always kind of, time stood still for quite a while for me. Yeah. Then we hit on that roller coaster that, after we hit the peak, it really did start to fly. So those waning years became waning minutes. And then once I retired, like time has flown. I don't, we made this appointment to sit together and have a discussion. I don't know, maybe 2-3 weeks ago. And it's here already. Like I'm flying out to North Carolina tomorrow. Like I'm, it's just, I make these plans months in advance and they're here already. So to make a very short answer, very long, I think I retired in July of 2021 officially. I got right on to like developing a YouTube presence and it was just, like salt and pepper shaker kind of like as topics came up, I would do a video and I was just trying to get my chops really. Sure. And I really kind of stumbled into things with Failure to Stop. There was a period of time where Mike the Cop was on vacation for one reason or another. So Eric Tansey and I kind of hooked up. We have a mutual friend and he liked what I had to say and I liked what he had to say. So it just kind of took off from there. So the podcasting thing is probably, I'm probably a year into it and it's an eye opener. I mean, it's a blast. Like it's everything kind of I dreamed of because I had an opinion, but I wasn't allowed to share it. And,
you're in a good spot, brother. I'm jealous.
I mean, the other thing is too, like it's the newfound freedom of being able to speak freely. Like I can speak from the heart now. And so you're going to get the real side of me. And it's not always what the citizens would say. And it's not always what Lieutenant Andrew Baxter from the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office would say, because he had to think about his job. And he had to think about what the sheriff might say.
Self-preservation.
Said that. Self-preservation. So now it just comes out and it's, it's still, I'm still the kind-hearted person I was. I think that's the majority of law enforcement. I think first responders in general, we're all just great people. And there's an intrinsic part of wanting to help and do all that, but we kind of can't say what we're thinking, or we can't say what other people are thinking. Come to think of it, we're just supposed to be the referees of the world and
Right.
call the balls and strikes. So, I mean, it's just the newfound freedom is what I enjoy the most out of it.
Yeah, well, it's great, man. I think you're doing a great job. I think I find you very tempered and honest, and I don't even anything that you say that may seem controversial is steeped in pretty much the truth. So I don't. I think you're. It's good, man. I like the balance between you and Eric. I like how he is kind of a little wackier. He gets a little crazier, you know, and you can kind of pull him back down a little bit. It's a nice contrast. So I think he's lucky to have you over there. And I hope I'm sorry, but I love the ability to be able to discuss things with him or you or anybody else and be able to disagree with you about it, or sure.
Mostly agree. But I'm telling you, we get stuff wrong all the time, and sometimes cops don't want to see that, and vice versa. Sometimes we get stuff right and cops don't want to believe it. So to be able to have this conversation and do it civilly and laugh in the middle of it and laugh at the end of it and still get along, I think this is part of the example we should be setting anyway.
Yeah, it's more like the 80s, It's like, I remember a buddy of mine said it perfectly, but in the 80s, my dad used to have like chili parties and families would come over, and if there was a political disagreement, it was like a Coke and Pepsi thing. It was like, whatever, screw you, you weirdo. And then that was it. Now it's like, I hate you. I'm gonna have you fired. I'm gonna let your boss know you're a psycho. You hate this group of people. It's like, it is so bad now that it's tough, man. I get like I said, I do the Cops and News thing, and I have such a good time doing it. And I'm a Christian guy. I go to church on Sundays, and that's really part of who I am. So I have my beliefs in that way, and even those. A country that was based on
Christian
values, who has a moral, the legal system's based on Hebrew and Christian law. We're having trouble even saying things. You know what I mean? It's yes. And so that's the part of me that says, screw it. I'm going to do what I want to do. Like God's will be done. I'm not going to be nasty, and I'm not going to be go after people, but I'll give my thoughts, and if they're based on my moral compass and are backed by biblical thinking, then I'm fine with it.
I can't agree with you more, one, but two, what better validation that there are forces at work that are trying to inject evil into the mainstream. You know what I mean? Like if the wholesome, humble, or biblical or whatever, not the evangelical people standing on the corner thumping a Bible, just everyday people like you that go to church on Sunday and believe and want to raise their children in the church. When there's a struggle there, like it's being injected into the schools, it's being injected into social media, it's being injected into TV, it's being injected into you can't turn anywhere without it being in your face. Obviously that kind of validates everything that we're saying. Like, look, dude, we just want to live our lives. Like, just let us raise our children. Just let us do what we want to do, and you do what you want to do. Like, we're not going to interfere in that.
Yeah, my wife said the exact same thing. She's like, this is validating. This is way. Yeah. They said this could happen or this would happen. It is what it is, brother. But let me ask you a question here. Can we go back to a young. Easy like Drew Breezy when you say young Officer Breezy. Can you tell me about your first call that you had that you, even if you just perceived it as a hot call? Because when you're new on the job, everything can seem exciting, but your first hot call.
I had a Chevy Caprice.
Yeah, it's a boat.
And it was a boat, and I had just been assigned this car. Now, whoever had it before me was either a coal miner or they smoked 12 packs a day. Right. And I I'm not complaining. I'm getting a free car, and and it's a take-home car, and it's a police car. It's what I dreamed of.
So proud of it, probably.
Right, armor all, and So I'm with my FTO, and we get this call. We're in this very densely populated area of Hillsborough County. It literally called Hillsborough Avenue, and there's a bridge that goes over the Hillsborough River. There's a lot of Hillsboroughs here. I know there's one up in Massachusetts or
New Hampshire, right above me.
New Hampshire, right?
Yep.
Okay, so here we are on Hillsborough Avenue in an area that we don't normally travel in. It's within the city limits. It's just that we were going around trying to get back into Hillsborough County, and a hot call came out. And I'm driving my car for the first time with my FTO to the right. He was a straight New Yorker. And he's
That's what I love about Florida cop stories. There's always all these different states down there being cops.
Oh my God. Yeah. Well, between the two of us, 100% of us were not from Florida. So here we are driving, and this hot call comes out, and I just kind of, look at him, and he looks at me like, you gonna hit that siren button or what? And so I turn on the lights and the siren. Well, the thing is, this was before Tampa exploded. So it was a very, very narrow set of lanes. And I was quite nervous. He was quite nervous. And I guarantee everybody on the road was quite nervous of me going by, trying to get through all of that traffic on the bridge. But they moved to the side for me, not without a few curse words. And I guarantee my blood pressure was a little bit over 120/80. But I don't think anything will ever replace that. I mean, in the interest of full disclosure, you warned me that you might ask that question, so I had to think back to it. But it came to the surface within 5 seconds. Like, I don't think I'll ever forget that. Like, I'll never forget that moment where, you just, something fills your soul the first time you get to do that. It's just, it's
time to go code.
Like it's an emotional moment. Like,
yeah.
This is what you saw Chips do, or this is what you saw Adam 12 do, depending on how old you are. And you're finally getting to do it on your own, and you're getting to see the other side of it. So it's kind of like being in Top Gun almost. Like, there's a fighter pilot aspect to it, and there's a video game aspect to it, and it's just pure adrenaline, and it's a lot of luck and a lot of hope.
Absolutely. I can remember pulling over my first car and then calling it in on the radio and being like almost shaking, just like excited, but also like because someone's sitting next to you, like, don't talk like an idiot on the radio. And then you got to know the codes, and oh my gosh, you're right. It is so exciting. And like every, even medical call that came in, it was like, it was intense, and you felt like
10 and 2, buddy.
You're not, you feel like 2. You're not supposed to be doing it, right? Like you're the guy in the cop car with the lights. Who let me do this?
You. Yeah. Right. They're calling you. You go. I had the benefit of starting as a dispatcher, and I say it's a benefit. I mean, I'll give you dispatcher stories all day long, but so I knew the radio codes, I knew the 10 codes, I knew how to speak on a radio, I knew how to operate the little mobile data terminal, which was So I mean, I had half the battle fought before I even suited up. But my first FTO actually on the first day asked me how he was doing. He asked for a progress report on how he was doing with the computer stuff. I knew I was destined for a good career at that point.
Yeah, especially he's got a former dispatcher next to him,
Yeah, he was probably nervous.
Dude, let me ask you a question, Bo, because I've been in dealing with dispatchers in law enforcement capacity one way or another for about 16 years. And what is I always feel bad when the center gets inundated and then you have something you have to call in. Like we can run. I apologize for my water pump. I'm in the basement, Drew. This is a green screen. It's a disaster all around me. So you have that thing you have to call in. And, like I said, I try to run silent. I'll clear myself from my own calls, and they can see that. And we have timers. If you're every 5 minutes, they'll check on you. But I always feel kind of bad when you call, and that you can tell they're just like, oh my gosh, what do you want?
But, I don't know that you'll ever be able to time that. Like, they're going to be busy generally. I mean, if they're busy, they're busy. Like, what are you going to do? So I don't know that you're ever able to time it, because you probably don't see the times when they're extremely busy, but they're quiet. So I think you just need to just give them what you got. And this is my partner, John, and I do this show called The Comm Center. And what it essentially is it's a form of failure to stop. We just take a call, a typical police call maybe, or an extraordinary police call. Let's not call them typical, but we'll break down the 911 call or the radio traffic, because I'm a former dispatcher turned cop. He's an active dispatcher that used to be an officer.
Yeah, it's perfect.
So we'll break that part of it down. Then I can talk about the police tactics, and he can chime in on stuff like that. So you have to understand the dispatcher world is completely different, and they are probably the most resourceful people on the planet, probably the most bitter at times people on the planet. I'm sure people experience that part of it, and there's a reason for that, but they're probably the most resourceful. So I say throw them what you got. I mean, if it's patently obvious that they're busy and you know you're just kind of throwing them an extra plate for them to juggle.
Guys do that too, and I just cringe in my car. I'm like, stop.
Yeah, well, they're going to end up getting the crash 2 minutes before they're supposed to log off. So
yeah, exactly.
Dispatch Karma has a way of working its way through.
Right. Yeah. See, ours is a big county board, so they do fire also. So ooh. I like it when you call and it's like you maybe you're just signing on, you don't know they have something going on, a big 5-alarm fire or something. And I like it when they just tell you straight up, we got multiple 911 calls, you're gonna have to stand by. And you go, okay.
Yeah.
Unless it's an emergency, then you come back and go, no, I need you.
Yeah.
But then I like that because then it just kind of they let you know rather than just being like super short and then you're like, oh, are they mad at me? That type of thing. It's like before texting an email, how you can't read people on there. Like
yes,
this has been going on way before that did. I've seen so many fights between dispatchers and cops because of misunderstanding. Like they're just they're adding words to the transmission that weren't there, and that was not personal at all. It was just like straight up had another. I was doing. Trying to do about to do CPR over the phone with somebody, and like I can't handle you right now. That type of thing,
It certainly goes both ways. Like I had plenty of experience up there. Then I went out to the street as a cop. I was a cop for over 25 years. I came back as the lieutenant, like you described a couple minutes ago, to run the same comm center. But then I finished out my career on the street. And I was still short and nasty with them at times. Like, these are the people that I used to just literally associate with. I used to hug them in the morning or whatever. I mean, and so they kind of, I think, understand that they get where we're coming from. They're going to take it personal. I promise you that. Everybody's going to take
We're
it
humans.
personal.
That's the way we are.
Right. But if I'm dealing with 4 people and they can't see that and they're checking on me and I have my radio turned down and they're calling me 3 and 4 times, of course they're going to be nasty when I finally answer on the radio.
That is the worst.
Right. And you don't want to kind of be nasty back, but you're pissed. You're like, hey, chill out. Like I'm dealing with 4 people here. I got my own plates to spin.
Right.
And so it's just it's like Sam and Ralph, the old cartoon. Everybody just kind of punches in and beat the mess out of each other, and then they punch out and go home. Right. I mean, that's kind of the way it goes.
It's a hard job, man. I just from standing there and watching people do it before, it actually gets me more anxious. At one point in my career, they certified me in 911 so that we had a dispatcher that was breastfeeding, and then also I became an OIC. So if they're in lieu of a sergeant, I could be in charge of the shift, which happened now and then. So I would have to do the breaks. So I would be sitting there, and they knew. I'd be like, how long are you going to be? Are you going to take your whole break? And they'd be like, don't worry about it. I'll be in the next room. I'm like, all right. Because 911 goes off, I really don't want to answer it. That type of thing.
Yeah.
It is, in my mind, it's easier to go and be in person and deal with it than trying to get information from a hysterical person and trying to decide how to act with them. To me, that's more. And then you can't just do that either, because then you have me calling you on the radio because I have a traffic stop. You know what I mean? It's a hard ass job.
I'm glad that you see that. These are the lessons that I've been trying to teach people, even from when I was a dispatcher originally. But when I went back up there, I did an actual research project to talk about dispatcher trauma, or the trauma in the civilian sector is actually what I call it.
It's got to be huge.
Yeah, it is. I covered the comm center people. I covered the child abuse investigators. We had civilian child abuse investigators as well. And, it is huge. And that's one of the main things that people just don't understand. Cops especially just don't understand of why they're so bitter or why they're so angry all the time. I mean, you cannot calm somebody down. You're dealing with the best people on their worst days, and there's no talking to them. You're trying to get information such as, where are you? What's your address? Is this the correct phone number? Are they bleeding? Is the head severed, or is it just hanging by a thread?
Right.
These are important questions, but to the person calling, the important thing is, why aren't the cops here yet? Or
Right. Even if you
so
ask
they
for
just
their
start
name, they're
screaming.
like, why are you asking my name? I'm asking for help. It's
Yeah.
like, we need some info. We need your info.
We kind of need to know what the officers are getting into here,
Right.
So,
Yeah.
it's beyond my imagination why any law enforcement agency or fire department or anybody, wouldn't pay attention to the dispatch. It's a critical area because it's the first voice you hear as a citizen. So if
Yeah.
you have a maladjusted dispatcher who's dealing with the trauma and is very short with the public and very short with the officers, and we're not dealing with their mental health issues, or we're not dealing with their unresolved traumas, you're going to get an angry person representing your agency, and that in turn is going to bleed over to your officers, because the officers are going to show up on the scene and the calling party is already agitated. So
Yeah.
I think it would behoove most administrators to spend a little bit of time in the communication center and understand that the unresolved trauma is the exact same as with the cops. The only thing is the danger is absent because nobody's firing bullets at them, or there's not a roof that's not about to collapse on.
It's a different sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, different kind of stress.
Definitely.
But yeah, I think that's why it was nice where I've never worked at a huge agency, but where I used to work, you could actually go inside and then walk into dispatch, and you could actually, and like I said, I gave them breaks. Where I am now, although it's smaller, like it's Western Mass, there's little tiny towns kind of put together agreements and stuff like that to police the place. There's a regional, they dispatch out of the state police. So it's like they're very much separated. I've never, I don't think I've ever met any of them in person. Which is, I've said before, like I've told my chief, I'm like, I should go up there and like bring some donuts or coffee. He's like, yeah, they'd love that. You should go meet them. And then I just don't, you know what I mean? It's like I should do that though. So dispatchers out there,
same story.
I love you. You guys are doing an awesome job. Drew, can you tell us about a strange or bizarre thing you dealt with in your career?
I've dealt with several strange and bizarre things. I was.
Well, you were in Florida, so.
Florida is strange and bizarre. I'll give you that.
Florida man.
We handled. I was a detective for many years. I was in an undercover assignment, but eventually that led to me working in criminal intelligence, and I worked in intelligence for a long time. And in that span, I was assigned to a Secret Service task force. So it was a financial task force. However,
like counterfeiting and stuff.
Yeah, counterfeiting, but it was mainly discounting food stamp. Like we did a few discounting investigations where people would go in with their food stamp cards or their benefits cards and trade it for cash.
Oh,
like they would
interesting.
get money, so we would indict the store, and the people. But, it's a money laundering issue. So we did a variety of financial investigative crimes. What eventually ends up happening, though, is Tampa is in the I-4 corridor. I don't know if you've ever heard of that term, but it's a hotbed for political activity around election time. So we were a hot spot for presidential visits, vice presidential visits, and as a task force, just a local cop, you're not tasked with dignitary protection with Secret Service. Your role is strictly the financial aspect of their job. However, none of those gigs ever go smoothly without the help of a local law enforcement agency,
right,
or probably 5 or 10 local law enforcement agencies. So
need the connections.
I kind of worked my way into yes, right. So I worked my way into a liaison role, and I got good at dignitary protection, and I got good at planning dignitary protective events. And so I ended up as just, this had nothing to do with Secret Service. There was a Hall of Fame football player here. I'm going to leave his name out because he died. He was deceased. He was a Hall of Famer, and there was a funeral for him. But before the funeral, there was a viewing. So they tapped my criminal intelligence unit to do the dignitary protection, so to speak, of just physical security in the church, kind of standing up front where the body lay, and
sure,
that kind of stuff. So we were briefed by the people from the church. Actually, it was an open casket, and here's this huge guy laying there, and they said, the family is very particular about people touching him. They don't want anybody to touch him. And we all, to the man, we all looked at each other like, who is going to touch a dead guy? Like who does that? Why
Maybe
would
like
you
the
do
wife would at most.
Well, they weren't necessarily worried about their own family. They were just worried about, like onlookers. I think, it was kind of a public
Like a
event
fan.
anyway,
I touched him. I got a lock of hair. Yeah.
Right. Something for eBay, right?
Yeah.
Can you sign this? So, I'm like the first shift. I'm right at this guy's head. I'm like, in the moment thinking, man, I'm an elbow's length away from a Hall of Famer.
Maybe I'll just grab a piece of his hair.
Right. Just a petal from a rose or something. I mean, it's bizarre.
Yeah.
And sure enough, I mean, the first person to come through the reception line or whatever you want to call it, the visitation line, the first person, and she was an employee of ours, by the way, grabs him by the face.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, I mean, my jaw hit the ground. I think I started. I think actually I crawled into the casket for a minute. Like, what are you doing? Like, leave this guy alone. We were trying not to make a scene because we didn't want to handle what was happening. And then, there was just all kinds of stuff
oh my
that we're trying to do to shuffle her away. Like, no. Like, it's porcelain. I mean, it's a dead person. Why are you touching it? I mean, just like that was lightning striking, in my opinion. Like, lightning never strikes, but when it does, it does. And I'm telling you, we all were like, no one's going to touch this guy. Plus, we were close enough. We were tight enough on it. I think, we would just assume that people would respect our position. We weren't in uniform. We were in suits, and
but you look a certain way. You're there for a reason. Yeah,
exactly. And I'm telling you, she walked right up and kind of embraced his cheeks, and we were like, oh my God.
Was this a copper?
I don't know why people would do that. What's that?
Was it a copper or just a civilian employee?
No, civilian employee. She was a civilian employee. Very sweet woman. I mean, I don't think she might even buy it, but
yeah, it's weird.
Kind of messed up his makeup. I mean,
oh my God, that's the last thing I want to do when I go to an open casket. I'm like, I always think like the person looks so much different and weird, and I can't get away quick enough. Put my hands on them.
Nothing to do with it. Yeah, I don't even think I was kind of weirded out just being there, and I didn't even know the guy. Like, if it's somebody I know, I'm with you. Like, I think we're kind of similar in this. Like, I see a theme here. It's the smells or the sights or whatever. But I mean, I'll take a peek just so I have that closure in my mind. But I'm not going to shake the dude's hand. I mean, like, they're gone. It's just that's their earthly presence. So let it be.
Yeah, that's really weird. Was there already people there for this, or was this like in front of people?
Yeah, the family was there, but they were they were in like pews 5, 6, and 7, and they were all just kind of talking amongst each other. And
did they mention it later? Like what happened with that lady?
No. No, nothing happened. I mean, nothing happened with the lady, but I mean, I don't know if they were going to voice their displeasure. They weren't going to deal with us anyway. They were very classy people, but we didn't hear anything more about it. I mean, we did what we could. I don't think we were going to shoulder the blame for that, but this is just a matter of like, if I tell you, please don't spill that drink you have in your hand, you're going to spill the drink in your hand. I mean, that's right. You curse.
Too much attention was paid to this.
Right. It's a forced error. I mean, what are you supposed to do?
Wow. That is bizarre. Dignitary. Did you have to go to any classes for that? For like, bodyguarding type of stuff, or did you pick it up as you go?
We stayed at the forefront. No, we didn't. We stayed at the forefront though, and we pushed. We were a very large agency, and we had a heavy emphasis on training, and we had a great relationship with Secret Service at the time, and there were other avenues. There were other dignitary protective courses that some of the detectives in my unit went to that were put on for by Department of Homeland Security or somebody. But what Secret Service ended up doing was putting together like a little mini, it wasn't going to be sanctioned. Like, you're not certified, like it's
like
not
trusted list of cops that they wouldn't mind working with type of thing.
It wasn't even that. It was just kind of like, this is our gift to you. We'll put a curriculum together. You just can't, we're not going to give you a certificate for you to try to get into a presidential event saying, hey, I'm certified by Secret Service to protect somebody. But they definitely, it was a win-win situation because they know that they taught us how to plan, and they taught us what to do in a contingency. If we were ever in a role, like, listen, when the president comes to town or when somebody major comes to town, somebody's going to stand at the doorway, and it's not going to be a Secret Service agent in a suit. It's going to be a cop, basically probably in a uniform, and they're going to need to know what to do when they're challenged, or they're going to need to know what to do when they need to evacuate the protectee and all that. And that's the kind of stuff that they did for us. They did a nice little 2-day course with mock dignitaries and
that's cool.
Pseudo limos and all
Nice.
kinds of stuff. We had a local business donate like this big building that they had just built, and
reminds me of those pamphlets you see, like RJ Blitz 8-week school of bodyguarding. Like you're going to go to that school and guard the president.
Yeah, this is right. This was basically truck driving school, except for dignitaries.
Yeah, we used to. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go.
I was saying when we were on the Cape, when I worked on the Cape, we'd have presidents and vice presidents go through just because they're going to Provincetown or somewhere, and but they wouldn't let us. They would call, like I worked overnights, and I get a call at like 3 a.m. and they'd be like, Hillary Clinton's going through with her motorcade at 4 a.m. Shouldn't be a problem. There's nobody on the road. I mean, but they would just tell us an hour before, and then they would be like, don't pull anybody over. Don't do this. Don't if something happens, we'll let you know that we need you. You don't need to show up guns a-blazing type of deal, because they don't know who they're dealing with here. They don't know our level of training or any of that. They're but wanted us to know that if we see a motorcade going 70 down Route 6, all blacked out, that's who it is.
That's who it was.
Yeah.
I think they appreciated us more. We were definitely more involved because we're a major city, and we got to know them because they brought so many people through. But there were cities that they dealt with in the north where jurisdictional issues became a very severe problem for them to try to get their job done smoothly and efficiently. So they appreciated that we all worked together, because in some of those instances, like actual fist fights would break out at their police meetings where they were trying to get stuff done. So,
oh my gosh,
you know what I mean? So I think that they were just appreciative that we.
Absolutely. When I was working for LA for backgrounds, I remember they have a metro division, which is like kind of they escort celebrities around, and they have a division within Metro. I think it's different than their normal SWATs, Metro SWAT or whatever. They actually are certified and allowed to work alongside presidential details. Awesome. They can have their gun, their submachine guns and all that. There's awesome. A handful of them that can do that, but you have 10,000 officers to pick from. You're going to find some very high speed, capable guys that they're going to want to work with. You know what I mean? Yeah, I worked at an 18-man department that they knew none of us. They were going to be like, yeah, let this guy come on. And
it definitely takes a village when you're trying to pull together. I mean, you got to cover all the bridges, you got to cover all the exits of the interstate, and that's why when Secret Service comes to town, they don't necessarily throw that weight around. They throw the mystique around,
right?
But they understand how to play the game and how to appease you.
Yeah, it's a cool agency. I mean, we had a uniformed sergeant that had a summer house in the town of Cape where I worked in, and he just let us bring him money. From the banks. We would go to the bank, they would identify it as counterfeit, we would do our report. Detective would just bring it. If this guy was on vacation, you could go to his house and be like, here, just give him the counterfeit bills. I mean,
that's awesome.
This is 15, 20 years ago, but I mean, I always thought, even then I was like, geez, I'd be kind of annoyed if I'm on vacation and they're giving me counterfeit money, but he would bring it back. And, this is small time stuff. The bank collected $700 bills that are counterfeit over the course of a couple months, give them to the Secret Service guy. And he actually came on and did ride-alongs with us.
I was going to say, how do you think he paid for the lobster rolls for all you guys?
Yeah, don't worry about it, guys.
It's on me.
Yeah. A buddy of mine, actually, he works at the Department of Defense now. I've mentioned him a few times, but he's a special agent with them, but he didn't know what he wanted to do, and he did I don't know what they get. They let him hang with the Secret Service. He already had top secret security clearances. He was up in that echelon of people. And he just couldn't do it. He was like, he said, especially when you hear from like the PPD guys, private presidential duty, that's like the top tier, the worst job. It's like, it's super boring. And a sergeant I used to work for, one of his good buddies was a Secret Service guy, and he asked him what it was like. He's like, put on your best suit and stand in the rain for 7 hours. That's what my job is like.
Yeah, and when it stops raining, stand for another 2 and hope that somebody comes to relieve you. It is like that. I mean, it's unless you're the chief of the detail, you're probably just, I mean, and there's no room for error whatsoever, and what they consider an error and what you and I consider an error are very different. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
yeah, those PPD guys are definitely the sharpest of the sharp, but they probably have the most patience, but they also have the most clout when it comes to, when they come to
Right.
town. It's the field, the agents in the field office, they know. I mean, that's not AAA anymore. That's major leagues.
Yeah, they had the technology. I mean, this guy we were talking to, who was in our bullpen area at the PD, and I had a friend of a friend, and I remembered his last name. And I was like, I swear he said his brother guards the president, but I never knew if I really believed him or not. He had a BlackBerry at the time with the screen. It was like just when iPhone was coming out. It was like 2007.
Yeah.
And he pulled him up on his BlackBerry and showed me a picture. He goes, "Is that him?" I go, "Yep, I met him at a wedding. He's a kid that used to work for me at the Harbmaster department." He had him, and to us, that tech then was like, holy cow, that's amazing. Right. And the fact that he was showing us the guy's dossier, we were like, whoa, I feel like we shouldn't see this.
They did seem to have endless money. I mean,
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Whether it was real or not, no one knows.
Yeah.
Drew,
we'll never know.
Can you tell us your most intense or terrifying moment on the job?
Well, I worked a jail escape case with when I was in criminal intelligence with another 2 detectives, and we had an informant come forward one day. He came forward on a Friday, and he's like, he was a trustee in the jail, and what they were trusted inmates that worked in our district offices. They would clean or they do carpentry or whatever.
Like high trust, they're not going to run away or whatever.
High trust and low level crimes, probably drug crimes or whatever, and which is a danger in itself. But they would entrust these guys to do labor, manual labor, and we had a guy that was doing labor, laying tile in a district office, and he's like, "Look, I got to talk to a detective. These guys are serious and they're going to blast their way out. They're using me to get all this stuff done, and I think I can head it off in the pass with the right way." And we did it. We handled this case for I mean, it was sleeplessness for probably a good, I don't know, 4 or 5 days. This informant was dealing with very conniving. There was a guy that was sent to prison for death. He was given the death sentence for a murder he committed. The death sentence was commuted to a life sentence. He was now working on getting that life sentence knocked down for a trial issue. So he kept coming back to this jail. Well, then he teamed up with this other guy who was charged with murder. He could have pled to manslaughter and probably already been done with his sentence, but he wanted to take it to trial. So you got 2 murderers hooked up with one another. Then you had a third guy who was who had been recently sentenced to 40 years in prison for serial, like for a bunch of armed robberies he did within the city of Tampa. So these guys hatched this plot. Obviously, the mastermind was the guy that was on death row at one point, and he was very careful not to involve himself or involve his name, but he hatched this plan. So we had to kind of go off of what the informant said and the whole 9 yards. The guy, though, made a mistake. We were listening to the jail calls one night, and he grabbed the phone when they were talking to another inmate that had been released that they were trying to get to steal a car and get clothes for them. And he grabbed the phone. He was like, "Are you going to be able to do this or not?" And we figured out who it was from there. So just to encapsulate this case, the D-Day came that the informant was to sneak firearms into the building, into the jail. We didn't even let the jail employees knew. There was probably about 3 or 4 people in the jail that knew what we were doing.
Yeah.
We had an undercover meet the brother of the second murderer up at our favorite Hooters to sell him the guns, and he sold him the guns and brought them right to the delivery point. At which time, the whole jail went on lockdown. And nobody knew why, and that was why. It was to get everybody separated and to make sure that there were no other hidden weapons anywhere. And but the crescendo of that was, I mean, within the span of 15 minutes, make sure nobody talks to nobody, make sure nobody talks to one another, make sure that you actually sell the firearms, like in exchange for money, make sure that the informant is there to be able to grab the, it was just like all of these things all at once. It was like it was like something out of the movies.
Wow.
It was bizarre, and it just happened to work. I mean, it was great teamwork, and it was a lot of plotting and a lot of planning and a lot of sleeplessness. But we were all awarded. We all got an award for it. But
nice.
More importantly, I mean, the interviews that came after, they were not like they picked the day that it was like around a holiday, so they were going to do it on this one particular day because the guy that did his job, the detention deputy that searched so well, he was working, so they wanted to make sure that they took him out. They were going to kill him. Then they were going to hold somebody else at gunpoint to make the other people, open doors for them. And they wanted them to think, I would rather be home with my family for this holiday than have to deal with this right now. So they felt that they would be more apt to open the door at that point.
Wow. They really thought that out.
I mean, the whole thing. And we recovered journals. We recovered drawings. We recovered all kinds of stuff. And the one guy ended up getting more time for the escape conspiracy than he did for the manslaughter. I think he's still in prison, as a matter of fact. The other guy, the main guy, he's still in prison. I mean, he was a scary dude. He was one of those, like, you just don't see a soul when you look at that guy to interview.
1,000-yard stare.
Oh yeah, I don't even think he had that. I mean, he had no soul. Like, he was probably thinking how he's going to kill me at some point. Like,
sure, I'm sure he was.
He was just sizing me up for when he gets to me in 2037 or whatever. But that was probably the most intense. And it's just, it's like a slow rolling hurricane or a nor'easter coming through. It's a lot of feelings all at once. And when it's done and you crash, you crash for a couple of days because of all that adrenaline you've been expending. And it was a fun case. I'd like to break that down on Failure to Stop one day, or maybe write a book about it. But it was a really intense case.
That's intense, man. Maybe you should hold on to that pseudonym. I'm Drew Breezy, man. You got the wrong guy.
I will. He'll never be able to find me now.
Yeah, it would be impossible, even with social media. So that's incredibly ballsy for that guy who was locked in with him to agree to do that. I would have been afraid for that guy the whole time.
So here's the deal with this guy. So we're like, what are you looking to get out of this? What do you want out of this? Because everybody wants something.
Sure.
And that's how informants work. And,
right.
He's like, I just want an in-house residential treatment program.
Oh,
that's
my goodness.
He's
even asking for the right things.
So bad. Yeah. I mean, he had been down the road so many times that he was tired of the addiction, and he was tired of the court system just sentencing him to, 30 days and you're going to go to this, 10 AA meetings or whatever, or whatever it was, NA or whatever. But he wanted in-house he wanted the court to order him to go into intensive outpatient therapy or whatever, or inpatient therapy to be able to stay there. I
thought you were going to say, like, man, I want a helicopter and a cheese pizza. Something like that.
Right. And $1 million.
Exactly. Well, that's
$1 million yen.
That's really sad, but also nice. I mean, it's hopeful for him that he actually was cognitive enough to know, like, this is it. I'm rock bottom. I need this program.
Pretty early on, that was that was one of the tests. Like, is this guy for real, or is he just making this up, or what? And what he wanted in return for this, okay.
Yeah,
that's valid. I mean, that's that's pretty valid. When you get to the heart of the matter and you determine what his motivation is, that's pretty valid. He's not asking for a Ferrari and two women to drive down to Miami with. He's a kilo of Coke or something.
It's great because and then you don't feel like you're kind of selling out the justice system. You're kind of
exactly
giving the guy some services that probably they should be giving him anyways. It's like,
well, it is. That is. I mean, it is what they should have been giving him anyway. But it's just that there's just so much overcrowding or whatever. He would have been on a wait list, and he knew that he would get out.
He can't handle it out there.
I guess the other half of it that just dawned on me, he wanted the program to get sober so that he could see his son again or something like that. He had a child that was taken from him or whatever, and so so like what more wholesome?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And he's
Absolutely.
not duping anybody by doing that. Like, it's all legit.
Yeah, that's awesome. What was the hinge point of getting the gun into the prison? Did they have a guard, or how do you get a gun into a prison?
What they did was they did 2 trial runs. This is pretty fun how they did this. That's why we say this guy is a brilliant mastermind. There was a certain area near the jail, we'll call it, and near where he was a trustee, where people dropped contraband off all the time. It was kind of known to us, but we, almost impossible to control. So if you saw a trustee behind a certain dumpster, you kind of knew what they were doing back there.
So they were legit. They were like let outdoors. Like they weren't just like in an office building. They could actually go outside.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, they could. They were supposed to be guarded, but they were usually guarded by a civilian, community service officer or something like that. But they take the trash out all the time. And so they would just, make that phone call from the jail, like leave it behind the dumpster. And this is exactly what we did. You leave it behind the dumpster in a McDonald's bag. The guy, the main plotter, wanted a little, I guess it would be a pint-sized bottle of vodka. So it was about the size of a handgun. And he wanted to make sure that the informant could make it through the door with the lax security. They would always pick the day that the non-deputy that they wanted to kill was working. There was another guy that was completely lax that would let them wear 2 or 3 pair of pants. And
the soup sandwich with the shirt untucked didn't do his job right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And they would just do a quick pack. You got anything on you? Okay, go in. So they wanted to make sure that he could get something the size of a gun in, and he did it twice. There were 2 different items that he smuggled in. One was a dental repair kit, and one, to make a grill, basically, to make gold teeth. And then the other was
priorities.
And the other was this vodka bottle that was about the size of a handgun. So we by the way took the firing pins out of the firearms when we sold them.
Yeah.
But we legit sold firearms, and we moved in on the guy and took him under arrest, and he confessed. He was like, yep, I was about to go put it behind the dumpster for so-and-so, and he was going to give them to my brother, and my brother was going to use them for whatever he was going to use them for.
That's incredible. So I'm not shocked, because there's other guests that have come on and told us about setting people in prison that are like trying to straight up hire people to kill their wives and stuff. It's like...
Yeah,
it's just so stupid.
I know. I mean, it's a closed communication network, and you can't, there's no expectation of privacy, but that's the stuff we catch. Like, could you imagine the stuff that we never know about, or we never catch? Or...
I've listened to jailhouse tapes before, and it's like when they're in long enough, they just get sloppy. It's like they don't even remember it's being recorded. They'll just start saying stuff. Even if their family members like, hey, take it easy, that type of thing, because they don't want to be implicated, but they're like, hey, maybe we should talk about this when you get out or whatever. Man, this doesn't matter, whatever. They're not listening. So they're listening.
There's an old joke about the mafia guys on the phone. Did you bring the thing? And the guy's like, what thing? And he's like, the thing. And he says, yeah, I brought the thing. And he goes, great. Did you bring the bullets for the thing?
That's awesome.
The code words aren't going to, they're only going to get you so far.
Right. Drew, can you tell us about a positive encounter, or dare I say heartwarming encounter from your police career?
Listen, I'll go all the way back to when I was a young rookie deputy. I mean, listen, I was a little bit more, I don't want to use it, I'm afraid to use the term liberal. I was a little bit more lax when it came to, I use my discretion a lot.
I not as militaristic, maybe.
Yeah, I approached the job with a human, with a lot of compassion, and not everybody went to jail that probably should have gone to jail. There were some that may have gone to jail that were just over the line, but I had a big heart. And it came from, it probably came as a trauma response, I'll be quite honest. So, I hated to see kids in peril or kids, upset about something. And I was a young rookie deputy working on Christmas or near Christmas. And I saw a guy, they were building an expressway up in the northern part of Hillsborough County, and I saw a guy pulled off to the side of the road. They weren't charging tolls for this road yet, but he was just beyond the toll booth. And the toll operator told me, hey, man, this guy keeps coming back here, and I don't know what's going on with him. So I drove over there just to see what he was doing, and he was deep in the weeds back there. I mean, there's probably like, I don't know, python. I don't
forget
know
it, man. I will not go 1 inch of the woods in Florida.
There's like king cobras for all I know. So I asked him, I'm like, what's going on? Like, what's happening? He was like, look, man, I tried to surprise my entire family, and I got 2 or 3 cats, 2 or 3 kittens, and I was just trying to surprise them for Christmas for the kids. And one of these little guys jumped out, and I can't find it anywhere. And I'm afraid he's going to get eaten. And I'm like, oh my God. So we could hear the cat, but we couldn't find him. So I'm telling you this, I stewed about this to the point where the next day, like, we gave up after a couple hours or whatever, or an hour. I got back in service. He went home. Nightfall came. The next day, I'm on my way in, and I see his car pull off to the side of the road again, and I'm like, is he here? So I get out, and the poor guy's still looking for this cat, and he's like, no, look, I'm just giving it one last try. And then he got in his car and left. Well, I stayed until I stayed until I found the kitten. and I found
That's awesome.
Like, I always get my cat. Like I found that kitten, and I called his house, and I'm like, hey, can you just relay the message? I found the kitten. And the wife was like, what kitten are you? Who is this? Like, what are you doing? What is this all about? So he finally came up, and he called me back, and whatever happened. He came up and met me. They wrote the nicest, like, family Christmas letter. You know how people used to do that?
Yep.
They wrote the nicest family Christmas letter where they outlined the whole story. I mean, it was like a 9-page story about how I found this stupid kitten for him. And they named it Baxter. They named it after me. They named the cat after me. I mean, I don't know what happened to it from there. I mean, the cat probably terrorized the neighborhood, but that's, I loved doing that part of the job. I mean, like, all we see is blood and death and gore, and when people aren't around, as well as I do, we're cutting up and having a great time, and testing the bounds of professionalism, I'm sure.
Right.
But there are just small little opportunities for you to go above and beyond that can make or break you, or as a person, or you as a law enforcement agency. And I really didn't care if I was wasting time or not. In my mind, I was doing a service to those little kids that were about to get a kitten for Christmas.
No, that's beautiful, man. That's a great story. I love that. You did ruin the surprise when you told her it was a kitten, though.
Yeah, I did. I ruined the surprise, and I think, if I remember the story right, I have it somewhere, because he sent the story to my sheriff. But I think I have the story somewhere. If I remember right, he went out and got other kittens. So they had to double up their kitten. They had to double up on the litter boxes. But the thing didn't get eaten by foxes or whatever.
Well, that alone, that it spent the night in Florida in the woods and didn't get eaten, it was destiny.
I couldn't do that. This little kid, but Baxter the cat did.
Yeah, that's one of the main things when at one point, my wife and I were looking at maybe going to maybe a freer state. We were looking at Florida, and it was like, man, these friggin' alligators and these snakes, they're huge. Because we want to we wanted to live in the country, but I'm like, but then we got to deal with that stuff.
I live in a pretty densely populated subdivision, but there are deer that walk in the backyard here. There's like a little pond in the back.
Yeah.
It's and there's a gator that lives in there. He just hangs out. I mean, he doesn't harm anybody. We have a neighbor next door who's from up north, and she's always concerned that her dog's going to get eaten, but he's always on a leash, and the gator's not going to chase anybody. Like, we're in the gator's home, really. So
right.
It is kind of cool, like, being, sitting out there and just seeing this, like, gator lurking,
it's like a dinosaur
pond back there. That's exactly what it is. It's like Jurassic back there. So
crazy.
It's kind of fun. And then, you'll see like 5 or 6 deer just kind of looking at you like, hey, can I join you over there?
That's so cool. Man, Florida is really a really cool place. I mean, I've been there twice. Both times went to Disney as a kid. And the one memory I really have, I mean, all the parks was really cool, but I remember getting like a hamburger before going into like Epcot Center or something off Disney property, and just standing, like, being on a little bench outside, and there was like legit like like parakeets or whatever. Like like I'm from the Northeast, so it's like in the Northeast there's like chickadees and a robin or whatever. But we're outside this place, and it's like it was like must have been in Orlando, and there's all these different freaking tropical looking birds. I mean, I don't know if they were pets and they got loose, but
no, they're up in the trees, man, and they're loud.
It's amazing, man. It's really cool. I love Florida, except for the whole gator/snake death probability.
Yeah, and the deathly heat. But you know, it's the same as
it's hot.
It's the same as being in Massachusetts in the winter. I mean, you know, like you just go from heated house to heated house, whereas here we just go from air conditioned house to air conditioned house.
Yeah, I always feel bad for you guys when I see I'll see a cop in some scene in like August on TV, and they're all standing outside, and you know, some white ass guy like me just with his bulletproof vest on. I'm like, that guy's dying on the inside. That guy just wants to die.
I had another field training officer tell me, look, you wear that vest every day because there's only so hot you can get. Like it's not like you're going to overheat.
You're going to max
which
out.
You can. But
right.
Yeah. Like there's only so hot you can get. And I did. I stuck true to that. Even when I was a rookie, all the way up through probably my last year or so, because I wasn't responding to domestics and stuff. I was a shift commander. So,
right.
I mean, I was a little out of shape as well. So.
Yeah, well, you climb the ladder, you get the little pad there. Yeah, I mean, it gets 85. It can get 85, 90 and humid in Mass in the summer, and it's pretty uncomfortable. But, you know, I've even thought about, you ever see that thing? I don't know anybody who owns one, but like hooks to your car vent and then a tube goes up behind your vest. I imagine they must have those in Florida like crazy.
Oh, yeah. I was given one. I was gifted one. I never used it, but I was gifted one. So I gifted it to somebody else before I left. Yeah. Those are definitely handy.
Cool Max or something it's called. I don't know. Like, I wouldn't be able to get on my cruiser. I'd be like, I got to stay here.
There's some that, I mean, they just hook like right here. So you're sitting there writing a report and you got this stupid tube that's hooked to your AC vent, and that thing works wonders. I mean, but I just, there's nothing better than just pulling your vest out and just feeling this warm rush of air or
smells like a hockey room.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, your t-shirts smell like hockey equipment, or like just that little drip of sweat down your back when you're directing traffic, like you're not agitated enough.
Oh, dude, I was met up one time. You meet up with the cruiser door to door, chatting on the highway, and I'm sitting there talking with the guy. It's like July, pretty hot, windows are down, and a June bug, which are like beetles like that big, goes onto my neck and goes right down that little valley, you're talking about where the sweat goes.
Yeah.
Right to the middle of my back. It panics and just starts. And I tell the guy next to me, I go, I got a June bug in my back, in my vest. You got to get out of your car and reach your hand down there. He's like, what? I'm like, please do it. He's like, okay. So he was a friend of mine, but he puts his hand down my slimy ass vest and pulls out this June bug. He's like, you owe me, dude. You owe me.
Right. That's a big favor. That's a big ask. Like, I think I would probably be like, man, tell my wife I love her. But this thing is going to burrow through my skin before I get to it. So.
Drew, one more. You give me about an hour of your time. I appreciate it. I have one more question for you, and it's a pretty popular one. A lot of folks listen to the show that are in academy, thinking about going to academy. I get emails from the men and women that are now cops that listen to you guys, and they say they became cops because of the interviews. So hugely important to me. So do you have any advice for these young people getting into the job?
Yeah, keep a foot in the community. Don't for 1 second think that just because the people around you identify with the traumas and the nastiness and the blood and gore that you go through, that's all that you can hang out with. You need to keep your foot in the community, whether it's in a church or your neighborhood, or hang out with just as many non-cops as you do cops. It does get a little bit annoying when people start asking you for cop questions, asking you for cop stories and stuff.
Right.
You really need to stay grounded in the community. Keep a foot in the community and take a look at any PTSD or PTS check sheet, like a symptom sheet. And if you think you're experiencing any of those, it may already be too late. You definitely need to speak up and say, look, you don't have to tell anybody other than your insurance carrier or your therapist or somebody, but
Right.
you're going to have to bleed some of that stuff off somehow, because it aggregates very quickly. I can tell you from personal experience, it turned into a nightmarish drinking problem for me. So I've been sober for 14 years,
Good for you.
since then. But it turned into a blackout drunk situation for me. So pay attention to your body and pay attention to what the trauma is trying to tell you, or how it manifests. And if there's just two more things, it's not us against them. Once you understand this, or once you grasp this concept, I used to teach interviews and interrogations, and you can play this game all day long where you're the cop and you've got it over somebody because you just arrested them. That's all well and good. I guess it makes you feel good, whatever. Or you can look at them from as a human being and understand there might be you might have to empathize a little bit and see why they're in the position they're in. And I think you'll see that you'll break through their barrier and they'll break through yours pretty quickly, and they'll tell you anything you want to know. If you treat somebody like a human being, respect gets respect. That's the bottom line. So if
Right.
you treat somebody like a human being, they're going to treat you like a human being back. This really is cops and robbers in the sense that you don't need to bring this home with you. You're going to lose a couple things. Hopefully it's not to an injury, but you're going to lose a couple of these battles. You're going to lose in court because it depends on too many things. Like it depends on the judge's mood or the jury's mood, or
Yep.
or what you say on the stand. You can't put this solely on you, but at the same time, it doesn't have to be us against the world. It's not like that at all. It is the community, and it's the community's law enforcement agency. You're just there to police it. It's not like you own the streets and they're going to have to do what you tell them to do. You're just there to protect it. And sometimes we get lost in that, and sometimes we have to admit it. And sometimes you have to admit when you're wrong, believe it or not. But listen, if you know the legal stuff and you know the mission statement of the agency that you work for, you're going to be probably head and shoulders above about 80% of the people that you work with, because complacency kicks in pretty quickly after the third or fourth year. So you don't have to do a whole lot extra to be up in that stratosphere of excellence. And then please, by all means, follow up with your dispatchers, because they don't get any closure. They take the call of somebody that's about to kill themselves, or somebody that
Great point.
or some family member that walked in on a scene where somebody's hanging from a closet or something. And then you go there and you get to finish. You get to fill in the blanks. You get to see the rest of the story. The dispatcher will never know what happened, and they will spend the rest of their lives painting that picture. Just trying to fill in the blanks on their own. It just takes a simple phone call to say, "Look, you did everything you could." They left a note. They've been planning this for 3 weeks, and it's got nothing to do with you. So,
Right.
follow up with your dispatchers. Keep them in mind. They're your lifeline. And yeah, there is a little sibling rivalry, but at the end of the day, you got to support them because they're supporting you.
Absolutely. Words of wisdom, brother. I appreciate it. That was great. Drew, honored to have you on, man. So great to get you on here. Do you have to run to do something, or can you hang up for like 30 seconds when I close the show?
I got it. I can hang out.
All right, brother. I'll be right back.
All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, the great Drew Breezy. Great interview. Love hearing from these Florida guys. And man, he had quite the career guarding foreign dignitaries, stopping people from squeezing celebrities' faces when they're trying to be dead. The prison thing was amazing. Definitely should do that, a breakdown of that on Failure to Stop, or maybe wouldn't fit into Comm Center, but I'd love to hear that extrapolated out even more. So thank you, Drew, for that. Everybody, thank you for the ratings and reviewings on Apple. I know I always say that, but I do truly appreciate it. We're up to like 927. I'd love to get to 1,000. That's where the big boys are. It's embarrassing for me when I'm hanging out with all my podcaster buddies and they have like 1,100 and I only have 900. Just believe that scenario happens, even though it seems improbable. It happens all the time. Right now, I need to thank the Patreons. I was reading my note because I almost forgot. Guys, this is the time of the show when I thank the Patreon sergeants for all that they do. Who I'm talking about is the great Sarah Pomeroy, Andy Biggs, Greg Gadboy, Adam Mihal, the great Chris June, Gary Steiner, Jake Pinito, John Shoemaker, Big Flute, Lauren Stimpson, the handsome Lane Campbell, Seth Wright, William James Long, that's Deputy William James Long's to you, James Rose, the great Tony Fahey, Ben Peters, Braden Walker, Corey Payne, Jason Lau, the great Mike Wynn, Nathan Gowan, Sasha McNabb, the great Scott Minkler, Tammy Walsh, Sean Clifford, Dennis, because that's all he put, Motor Cop Chronicles, that's the Iceman, George Tessier, Nick News, Scott Young, the great Tom Connell, Wayne M. Miller, Derek Warden, Burley Boards, Doug and Kelly Newman, Joe DeFries, Dave Ellman, Elliot Sykes, Holly Vanover, Richard Tolles, and Brittany Sims. Almost made the whole thing. Had to restart. But guys, thank you for the support. I truly appreciate it. If we keep rolling, I'm going to keep doing the shows. If we can get the Patreon to grow, that's just the absolute best way to be supported by true super fans. I appreciate you. I love you guys. Thank you for that. And that's all I got. I got nothing else in housekeeping here. So let me just do the outro, and I'll see you guys next time.